Hello all my fellow bookworms and welcome back to another video. So today is my wrap up for June and July. So this wrap up is a little bit different just because it is for my OWL examinations. Now, anyone who follows G from Book Roast knows about the magical readathon that happens 2 times a year. Every year you take your OWLs and then you take your NEWTS. So OWLs are your ordinary wizarding levels that you have to sit in order to start the process of going forward to your chosen magical profession. Now, unfortunately, during the actual month of the OWLs, which was April 1st to April 30th, I was sick. Also, I wasn't doing BookTube yet. But, however, I have gotten special dispensation from Professor McGonagall and from the Ministry of Magic to sit for my OWLs now, before I do my NEWTS in August. So, first things first, my career. So I have decided to study to be a librarian, often confused with a muggle career of the same name. Librarian's job is extremely dangerous. Books are the single most important means of our education, and the task of guarding, distributing, and hunting of magical tomes is not to be taken lightly. This is a position for the adventurous at heart. And really, to believe that, all you need to do is remember the restricted section at the Hogwarts library where books can bite you and attack and have to be chained up, and unless you reach a certain level at Hogwarts, you're not allowed to go anywhere near them. A 3-year hunting sabbatical is available if you wish to focus on the search of lost tomes. Yes, I do. I would like to focus on the search of lost tomes, please. So, here is my career. Now for my OWLs, I needed to sit the tests for Ancient Runes, Arithmetic, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Defense Against the Dark Arts, History of Magic, and Transfiguration. I also decided to do some extra credit and I sat for Care of Magical Creatures, Charms, Potions, and Muggle Studies. So I felt all of those were actually important OWLs to take as well if I'm going to be a librarian. So we're going to go through the books that I read for my OWLs. Let's do my extra credit first, and then we'll go into the books that were actually required. So the first book that I read was actually a manga. I don't have a copy, so I'm going to put a picture right here. And this is Fruits Basket. So this is a manga series that follows a girl who somehow winds up in the middle of a family curse. So there is a family that is cursed by the Zodiac. I don't know if that's what started the curse, but that is how sort of it presents itself. The members of the family that are cursed will turn into the animal that represents that sign, sort of the Chinese New Year, where you have the year of the dog, the year of the rabbit, the year of the tiger, etc. if they are hugged by a member of the opposite sex. Hey guys, so this is editing me. I'm just throwing this in that I totally forgot to mention that Fruits Basket was for Care of Magical Creatures, and the prompt was to read a book that has a land animal on the cover. Okay, back to the video. I just found this really fascinating as a different sort of spin on the whole Chinese lunar calendar. It was just really cute, and it was a fun read. I gave that a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next extra credit class that I decided to sit for was Charms. And the book challenge for this one was Age Line, or to read a adult work. Now, Age Line, of course, is from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where Dumbledore draws an age line around the goblet, or rather the cup that they're all going to put their names in, so that only wizards 17 years old or higher can enter. So for this, I actually listened to a audiobook, and I will put a picture right here. And this is Yes Please by Amy Poehler. So this is an autobiographical work written by Amy Poehler and read by Amy Poehler. I also gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because not only was the book really good and very funny, but having Amy Poehler actually read it was freaking hilarious. If you like autobiographical works, and especially if you like things that will make you laugh, please, please, please get Yes Please from Audible. And I didn't even plan all those pleases with the title. It just happened. But this book was hilarious. I was laughing all the time. I listened to this on my commute to and from work, and it really helped to deal with the stress. So that was perfect, and I also gave that a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next in my extra credit work was Muggle Studies, and for this you had to read a contemporary book. I also listened to another audiobook and another autobiography, and this one is called Bossypants, and this is by Tina Fey. So if you know who Amy Poehler is, then you definitely know who Tina Fey is. They're basically two peas in the same pod. They're both hilarious. They're both just great. I love them. So this is another autobiographical work. I also got this from Audible, and it is also read by the author, which is of course Tina Fey. I was pretty much laughing throughout the entire thing. There are a couple of like serious chapters, but for the most part it's incredibly funny and entertaining, and I just loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. And my last extra credit was Potions, where you had to read the second ingredient or a sequel. And for this I listened to another audiobook, Magnus Chase and the Hammer of Thor. Magnus Chase and the Hammer of Thor. So this book is written by Riordan, who is pretty well known for his books that are based on mythologies. So of course there were the Percy Jackson books, which are all based on Greek mythology. He also wrote a series of books that I never read that are based on Egyptian mythology. I know it's based on Egyptian mythology. I just can't remember what it's called. I never read them. And then of course you had the Heroes of Olympus, which is a continuation of Percy Jackson. And now we have Magnus Chase. So Magnus Chase delves into Norse mythology. So all of the kids in this series of books are the children of Norse gods. So they're the children of Odin, they're the children of Thor, they're the children of Freya and Frey. Magnus is the son of Frey, who is the Norse god of spring and healing. In the first book, he dies and goes to Valhalla, and he has, of course, a quest, because that's what all of these books are, is these big, powerful gods send these little part mortals on quests to do things that they can't freaking do for themselves. I'm telling you, some of these gods are kind of just a bit useless. Just saying. So he, of course, completes his quest, returns to Valhalla, and the second book picks up where the first book left off. Now, in the first book, Magnus meets up with Thor, finds out that Thor has once again, for probably the umpteenth time, misplaced his hammer. In the second book, Thor finally reaches out through one of his goats. You have to read the book to really make that make sense to you. But he basically sends Magnus on a quest to find the the hammer. He finds a sword in the first book. There's always a sword or a hammer or something tangible that you actually have to go find. It's all about finding your weapons. So he goes off to find the hammer, and that entire book is focused on that. So that was it for all of my extra credits. The 5 owls that I actually had to take in order to become a librarian. So the first was from History of Magic, and the prompt for this one was that you had to read a book that was published at least 10 years ago or more. For this book, and it's no surprise considering it is a magical readathon, I reread Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now, I don't really think I need to give a synopsis of this. It's the first book in the Harry Potter series where he first goes to Hogwarts and has to find the Sorcerer's Stone and battle Voldemort, blah, blah. I always enjoy rereading these. I do it at least every couple of years. This is probably the one thing that always survives my reading slumps. I just love it. The next book that I had to read was for Transfiguration, and for this you had to read either a book with a red cover or a book with sprayed edges. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any books with sprayed edges. I am looking forward to getting some, but I did have a book with a red cover. And I actually started listening to this on Audible while I was waiting for my package to come in from Book Outlet, because you will remember from my haul that I actually got this book, and you're probably thinking, how the hell did you read that quickly? But it was because I had already started listening to it while I was waiting for the copy to come in. So, all right. So I won't go too much into a synopsis of this, just because I do go into it during my Book Outlet haul. I will go ahead and link that down below. But basically, this follows a dystopian society where there's not only the government, but there is something also called the Guild, and their job is to punish moral offenses. I say moral because a lot of people get reported as committing these crimes that actually didn't, or it's usually a way for people to revenge themselves on other people. It's not a good system. It's a dystopia. Of course, it's not a good system. But it follows the main character of Celestine after she falls from grace and becomes a flawed. She is branded as flawed, and this book is the second in a duology, the first book, of course, being Flawed, and this one being Perfect. So it's basically just follows her journey of living life as a flawed, of meeting other people who have also been branded, and so on. And then eventually, of course, she fights to bring down the very government that has sort of imprisoned her and all of the other flawed. Now, I only gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The writing was really good, and I felt like the character development was also well done. I'm not saying anything bad against Cecelia, Ahern, or her writing skills. It's just I felt this was very predictable. I mean, it's basically just another dystopian story. There's this dystopia. There's a girl who thinks that this dystopia is perfectly fine until, of course, she falls victim to it herself. And then it's like, oh, maybe this isn't so good. I don't always like stories like that where someone is perfectly fine living in a government that is horrible to a specific group of people until they themselves are forced to join that group. Okay, so the next 3 books were actually very anticipated for me. So first I'll go into the book that I had to read for Arithmetic. And again, I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly. So the prompt for this is that you had to read a book that was written by more than one author. So I chose My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brodi, Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. This is also the trio of women who wrote My Lady Jane, which is based on the story of Lady Jane Grey, who became a queen during the whole sort of Tudor time. And this one is a retelling of the book Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So in this story, Jane Eyre, still growing up at the Lowood School for Girls, can actually see ghosts. And she later learns that she is something called a beacon, which means not only can she see ghosts, but ghosts respond to her in a certain way. She can tell them what to do. They follow her. They'll do as she says. She doesn't have to trap them. She doesn't have to force them to do anything. Basically, if she commands it, they will do it. She also has a friend at Lowood who is Charlotte Bronte, who of course is the original author of the actual book. And Charlotte is an aspiring writer who decides that she wants to write a story based on Jane. So she starts following Jane around, and then it's an entire story about how there is this sort of secret, not really secret, everyone knows about it, but this group of people in England who they can see ghosts because they've died. So if you die and you come back, suddenly you can see ghosts. And their job is to go around the country trapping ghosts and then saving, not really saving people because the ghosts don't actually hurt anyone in the books. They're just sort of annoying. But it's still the job of this group of people to stop ghosts and then trap them. So they're basically a very polite English version of Ghostbusters, only not as cool. So of course there is a plot. There is a power mad madman who wants to take over England, yada, yada, yada. My main focus, of course, was Jane and her story. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I will have to say that most of the points I took off was because I absolutely love Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I've read it at least half a dozen times. I've seen every single movie rendition of it. So I just love Jane Eyre, and I don't like retellings of it. So I think that kind of colored my perspective. So this may be a 5 out of 5 stars for other people, but for me, it's a 4. So the next book that I had to read was for Defense Against the Dark Arts. And for this one, the prompt was Reducto, to start, to read a book that's title starts with the letter R. Now for this, I chose The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare. This, of course, is the exclusive edition from the Bookish box. The regular dust jacket looks like this. So this book picks up right after the final book in the Mortal Instruments series. It is primarily focused around Magnus Chase and Alec Lightwood, who of course are my 2 favorite characters and my absolute favorite ship from the whole Mortal Instruments genre. I love them more than Clary and Jace. I love them more than Simon and Isabel. I love these 2. They're so cute. They're just so adorable. I freaking love them. Anyway, so they decide to go on a vacation across Europe together. Okay, they've only just declared themselves to be boyfriends, and it turns out that in his past, Magnus, as sort of a joke, started a cult called the Red Hand. And he didn't really mean to start a cult. It was more to see whether or not he could. But then he forgot all about it. His memory was actually erased, and he has no memory of actually starting the cult until he and Alec go to Paris. And then they are confronted by sort of a warlock guild who accuses Magnus of starting this cult that has now started murdering people. So Magnus not only has to retrace his steps and try to figure out exactly what happened and exactly who erased his memories and exactly what is going on and who the new leader of the Red Hand is that is apparently pretending to be Magnus. And in between all of that are a lot of really great moments between Magnus and Alec, sort of their romance just continuing. Now, I do want to point out that if you are a fan of the TV show that was on for a while, this book will not make sense to you. Because, of course, in the TV show, they've already been boyfriends for a long time. They've broken up, they've gotten back together, they've gotten married. Please know, the TV show does not have a lot to do with the books. Anyone who's read the books will tell you that. Now, I actually got out of the Cassandra Clare sort of movement for a very long time. I read the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series, and I thought it was just going to be a trilogy, and then I really liked it, but then she came out with 3 more, and I only made it halfway through the 4th book before it was just like, ugh. But then I really started liking the Infernal Devices after I read the first book in that series, and then this is just what came in my Bookish box, and I decided to read it, and I loved it. I ended up giving this, I believe, yes, a 5 out of 5 stars. I just love Alec and Magnus. I have to say I gave it maybe a 0.02 points just because I love this freaking cover. But I love the 2 of them. I love the whole LGBTQ aspect of this because not only are they a couple, but they also find 2 other girls who are also a couple. There's a lot of bisexuality in this. And I just loved it. I love seeing the dynamic of the 2 of them together. They are actually the only thing I liked about the TV show. Didn't like anything else. Loved them. So that was Red Scrolls of Magic, which I read, of course, for Defense Against the Dark Arts. Now we come to the last book. I promise you guys this is the last one. If you've hung in this far, thank you. So the final book that I read for my owls was for the Ancient Runes subject. And for this, we had to do a retelling. And for that, I chose A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So I'm thinking that I'm probably going to go ahead and do an entirely separate book talk on reading this, even though I know there are several out there already. I just feel like I have so many thoughts and so many opinions about this book that if I were to try and put them in this wrap up, we would be here forever, and we've already been here quite some time. So I will tell you that I only gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. For the most of the first part of this book, almost every single character was getting on my nerves. I hated her family. Her father, her 2 sisters are like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Why are you putting the responsibility of you actually, eating onto your younger sister? What is wrong with you? And why isn't the dad helping out? And why is the older sister so mean? And why is the middle sister so useless? So I did not like them. Feyre was a little too... I know that Belle is supposed to be very curious and a little too curious for her own good, but Feyre got herself occasionally into some serious shit just because she refused to listen to anyone. And I did not like that. Tamlin also got on my nerves because, especially when it comes out at the very end of the book, that he's been trying to sort of romance her, and you're like, really? That was you romancing? Wow, you are very bad at that. More on that in my book talk. I think the only character that I liked in the first half of the book was Lucien, and just because he was so honest about the fact that he's kind of a dick at first, but he's just so open about it, and I like that. I like it that if you're going to behave kind of a little bit like a prick, just be open about it. Embrace it. I like that. That's why I liked Lucien, and I also I love redheads, which is why I've always had a thing for Ronald Weasley. Actually, I've had a thing for Ginny Weasley, but that's an entirely different story. Anyway, back to the book. So the first half of the book really annoyed me. The second half of the book really picks up when Feyre has to go to the Under the Mountain in order to save Tamlin's ass and all of his people. She then has to perform 3 impossible tasks set for her by Amarantha, who is the villain of the story. And she really shows her struggle to hold on to her humanity, because she is a human. I think a lot of the times what really annoyed me throughout this book is the way that Tamlin and Lucien and all of his servants, and then Amarantha and everyone else at the court, expects her to understand the way that they do things and the way that their world works. And it's like, dudes, she's a human. She's lived her entire life on the other side of the wall, knowing absolutely nothing about any of you freaks, and you suddenly expect her to just understand the way the world works for you? No, that's not how this goes, okay? You actually have to tell her stuff, because she's a human, and we're kind of dense. I'll admit that. We kind of are. Anyway, so she completes her tasks. Spoiler alert, she saves Tamlin's ass, because apparently he's not good for anything. More on that later. But I did give this, again, a 3 out of 5 stars. The writing was really good. It basically drew me in right away. I love it when it's a book that I seriously just want to keep picking up over and over. So that gave it most of its points. I also really did start to like Feyre. Her and Lucien were the only characters that I ended up liking by the end of the book. Everyone else I either completely despised or just didn't understand. Rhysand, we're gonna go more into him when I actually do my book talk, 'cause I got a lot to say about that man. Anyway, this was the final book that I read for my owls. I have now completed my owls, thank you, and I ended up reading 9 books, which means I get an outstanding. I'm Hermione. Anyway, my next upload I will eventually be doing a book talk just based on A Court of Thorns and Roses and the other books in the series. And I will be preparing for my NEWTS. So those start on August 1st and go through the end of the month, which means at the end of July, I will be showing you my TBR. it is really expansive. I thought I had to read a lot of books for the owls. Nothing compared to what I've done to myself for the newts, and you'll see when I do that TBR. So thank you for sticking with me this long if you have actually managed to get to the end of this video. If not, I totally understand. But if you did like it, please feel free to give it a thumbs up in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you would like to check out some more of my magical and book-related content. I try to upload every Tuesday and Thursday, you know, fingers crossed. And I will soon be doing my TBR along with some reading vlogs for the August NEWTS exams. So thank you for sticking with me. I really enjoyed making this video. I look forward to making my next one, and I'll see you then. Bye.